PZZSian here. So today I'm going to be making a video on my MacBook Pro 15-inch, alright? Now, I'm not going to be doing a review because I've already done a review on this thing. What I'm going to be talking about more specifically in this video is actually the display, okay? This is not the Retina MacBook Pro. This is the sort of previous generation MacBook Pro, if you will. This is the mid-2012, because for some reason they've never updated them this year. This is the mid-2012 MacBook Pro. But the thing is, and you wouldn't know it just from looking at it like this, it has an anti-glare screen. Alright, so I wanted to go ahead and give you guys sort of my final opinions on the MacBook Pro with the anti-glare screen. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. So first of all, the reason why I have it closed is because I just wanted to go ahead and show you guys that when this thing is closed, you cannot tell, you know, from the outside appearance that this thing is anti-glare. It looks completely identical to any other MacBook Pro out there, you know, with a glossy screen. So, you know, same ports obviously, same hinge, except my hinge is broken right to there. That happened like a week after I got this thing, and still see if I can do something about that. You know, everything on here is the same. I don't know if maybe the serial number would reflect that, but I don't know if the top is manufactured separately from the computer. It, like, I don't know. If, like, you know, anyways, I have really no idea. But basically, like I said, you know, there's really no way, you know, physical way, you know, difference between a glossy and an anti-glare. But when we go ahead and crack this open and move this up here, you will in fact see that we do have a bit of a difference. The major difference between the glossy and the anti-glare is the fact that instead of having a glass bezel around the screen, you actually have an aluminum bezel around the screen, okay? And you also will find that the LCD panel itself is actually exposed, alright? So what I mean by that is that on the glossy model you have the glass bezel. The glass bezel actually covers the entire screen. Basically you have the screen, and then on top of that you have a pane of glass. I'm assuming it's tempered glass. So you'll have just, like I said, you'll have the screen, you know, the actual LCD panel, and then above that you will have a big sheet of tempered glass covering the whole thing. But with this, what you get is you get the screen, and then you get an aluminum bezel. But the aluminum bezel, that's all you got. There's no glass over here. If I were to touch the screen, which I'm not going to do because I hate touching the screen, if I were to touch the screen though, I would be touching the LCD panel itself. There is nothing preventing me from touching the LCD panel. So there you go. Those right there are the two major differences. Other than that, there again, like I say, physical appearance down here, you know, where the actual, you know, there's nothing, you know, physically different. Even from the back, you know, you can't tell that this is an anti-glare model. There is no way to tell. So everything is the same. Maybe the backlights are slightly different. I don't know. I've never seen anybody compare that, but you know, I guess if that were the case, the Apple logo would look different. But anyways, let's go ahead and I want to go ahead and give you guys my official thoughts on the anti-glare display, more so. You know, sort of my thoughts on the anti-glare display, sort of the pros and the cons of having one. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into the pros and cons. I might be doing a lot of cutting in that last part because this is really where the main thing I wanted to focus on in this video were actually the pros and cons. So let's go ahead and get into that. So, starting with the pros. Obviously the first pro is that, well, it's an anti-glare display. And, you know, that's a little bit obvious. Yes, it's an anti-glare display. You know, that we know that. Why is that a pro? If you've ever used a MacBook Pro with a regular glossy display, you will know how bad the glare can be. It can be awful. And I've actually experienced that. About 2 weeks before I actually wound up getting this computer, I was actually using a computer exactly like this, but it had the glossy display. And I found the glossy display to be a huge issue. I was using it in a classroom environment. It was actually my teacher's computer. We had these big sort of incandescent tube light bulbs in the classroom, and yeah, they really produced a bad glare. In fact, when I was using it, the glare would sometimes take up the majority of the screen, and I was really sitting there messing with the computer screen, trying to figure out what to do. And the thing is that if I'm using a laptop in school, and I'm in sort of that particular I guess environment, where we were we were allowed to sort of move around and talk to other people and stuff. I can't sit still with a laptop for nothing. I can't sit still at all. I have to move around all the time and sit in different places, and so I was constantly adjusting the screen angle, and these things don't exactly have the best viewing angle, so sometimes the optimal non-glare angle would look maybe something like that, and I'd get this horrible coloration, because of the fact that it's off angle viewing or whatever. So it was just, man, not fun. So, but I can tell you guys right now, if I brought this computer into that very same classroom, sat in that very same spot, and used it, the glare wouldn't be an issue at all. One bit. Obviously, that's very much obvious. I mean, like I say, it is an anti-glare. You can see right there, that's definitely diffused. So it would, if the glare is minimal. I mean, yes, you just saw there, you do get some glare. I mean, it's inevitable, but it's going to be minimal. Obviously, let's go ahead and set this in the middle of the screen. So there you go. It would be minimal. I would definitely can say without a doubt, this would be a much more enjoyable experience. Excuse me. This computer would have been much more enjoyable to use, in that situation than the computer that I did use. So there you go. I really, like I say, I really feel bad for, kind of expressing my emotions about this initially, as much as I did in my unboxing video, because this really, guys, is an advantage. I have a huge advantage over all the other MacBook Pro users who, have this model. Sorry about that, just got some notifications suddenly appearing right there. Just got a random flood of notifications, so I went ahead and turned those off. So anyways, that is Pro number 1. You're going to have a definitely, a lot more universally usable because of that anti-glare screen. You can practically use this thing outside. I mean, it will still be hard to see, obviously, if you're using it outside in a bright, sunny day, because obviously the sun is brighter than the screen. It would be more usable than, obviously, the glossy model, which basically turn into a mirror in outdoor situations. That is Pro numero uno. I spent a little bit more time on that than I wanted to. Okay, and now for Pro number 2, which is a bit of a big one. The anti-glare screen is actually higher resolution than the baseline glossy model. Alright, now what I mean by this is that when you're buying this model MacBook Pro, again, like I say, the model, not the Retina model, we're talking about this model, the 15-inch, the 15-inch non-Retina MacBook Pro. I guess we could call it the SuperDrive MacBook Pro, if we wanted to put a name on it. Actually, you know what? I think Apple should rebrand this to SuperDrive MacBook Pro. They should. I don't know why. That sounds a little bit... Or maybe like MacBook Pro with SuperDrive, I guess. Something like that. So that way they could at least keep it on the market for a little longer, because people do use these things. I know they do. Anyways, wow, getting distracted. When you're buying this model MacBook Pro, you get 3 different display options. You can buy just the stock, display, which is a glossy model. Then there's the anti-glare, which is about an extra $100 to the price. And then there is a high-res screen, which, let me get this more straightened out. It's back to glossy, but it's actually like, it's really high resolution. It's actually the same resolution as my 24-inch iMac. It's 1920 by, no, it's 1920 by 1200, which is a little bit insane. It's still not quite yet Retina spec, but still, that's a really good display for a 15-inch MacBook Pro. There's really, you can't really complain about that. But like I say, it's no Retina screen. But anyways, those are the three options. And the baseline glossy model is I can't remember. It's like 1200 by 960, I think, which sounds fine. It's probably the same pixel density again as my 24-inch iMac, but the Antiglare screens actually have, and I can't remember, I think it's 1680 by 1050 pixel resolution. So it's not quite a 1080p screen, but it's close enough to pass. You can watch a 1080p video on this and it will look basically 1080p. I mean, it's so stinking close to it that you basically could call this a 1080p notebook. So there you go. That's a definite big advantage. It also is a good advantage because if I'm using ScreenFlow to record screen footage of this for a YouTube video or whatever, that involves the Mac, I can use what is almost 1080p resolution, which is very nice, and it's it's just awesome. I like that. So there you go. It is indeed a bit of a higher resolution than the stock model, and only for $100 more, guys. You can't complain. You really cannot complain. It is a beautiful display. Okay, so that is it for the pros. I want to go ahead and I want to get into some of the cons. Like I say, my opinions now, the pros do outweigh the cons. There are going to be a few more cons than there are pros, though, but really the pros, again, like I say, just the pros themselves are good enough to outweigh the cons in this case. It's really opinion, though. I mean, it just depends on, do you prefer glossy over anti-glare, I guess, really. But in my opinion, now, the cons are definitely, they have no chance against the pros. I mean, seriously. So, anyways, let's go ahead and get into it. So, actually, you know what? There's really only one big con. Well, let's see. There's one big con and a few more little tiny cons. And these little tiny cons are basically me being nitpicky about things. But let's go ahead. Let's get to the big con. And that is the fact, as I already mentioned at the beginning of this video, the LCD panel is exposed to the elements. Okay. Now this can cause issues in multiple ways. When your screen gets dirty, if someone were to touch your screen, it's going to leave behind a fingerprint, and that fingerprint is going to be on the actual LCD panel itself, alright, as opposed to the glossy model, where it's going to be on a glass panel that is in front of that is basically protecting the LCD panel. So, what that means is that when it comes time, you're looking at your computer screen and you see, man, my screen is dirty. It is time to clean it. My big thing here is that, and I actually did recently clean this, so I can kind of speak to this, is that if this were a glossy screen and you decided it was time to clean it, you could really get in there and scrub it down and clean it. You could actually use a bit of elbow grease to really get in there and just really clean that up, because it's glass. All right. Now, I mean, glass is typically thought of as being fragile, but the glass that they use on these things, guys, you can push on it. You can. It's not going to crack. And there's not even enough room for it to really flex to, I think, to even potentially crack under, pressure like that. So, you can really get in there and use elbow grease, but when it comes to these anti-glares, when you're cleaning it, you're going to be putting pressure on the actual panel itself. There's nothing in front of it, to protect it from that. So you're going to be pressing down on the panel itself. So I mean, you really have to. I mean, you can still use a little bit of force on it, but you can't use a lot. So you can't really clean it as thoroughly, and it takes longer to clean, because if you want it to be a thorough cleaning, you have to spend more time doing it. So, and this is if you don't have something like iClear or any of that stuff that you can use to clean your screen, which I really do want to get, but I just haven't yet. So yeah, I mean, I'm talking like a damp cloth basically is what I'm talking about. You can't be as thorough with it. So that's obviously a bit of an issue. So yes. Anyways, con number 2, going kind of going along the same lines here, is that this screen is obviously more susceptible to damage. If like let's say you're using your computer in an environment that it could potentially, get damaged. I don't really understand why people do this, but in some cases people might use their computer in the middle, not in the middle, but like, in like a gymnasium where there is currently a basketball game going on or something like that. And let's say that the basketball goes astray from the court, bounces off the wall, behind you, and then hits right smack dab on the screen. Now, if you're using the glossy model screen, you're going to be upset. Obviously, your nice, expensive MacBook Pro just got smacked in the face by a big, fat, heavy, bouncy basketball. But like I say, if you're using the glossy screen, you have that glass, layer over the LCD panel. So, if it's going to do any damage to your screen, it's going to have to get through the glass first. All right, now it can still damage your actual panel itself without damaging the glass. Like I say, the glass is flexible, obviously, but it's not going to be as significant as if as it would be if it were the bare LCD panel like it is on the lovely Antiglare here. So obviously, if a basketball or something similar to that were to smash into this, chances are you would probably get some damage. So there you go. These screens are not exactly robust enough to really take a basketball or an impact similar. And even if you got mad at your computer and punched it, which really I would not recommend you do, but sometimes people do get a little bit out of hand and they just rage at their electronics. It's not as rage proof as the glossy model. So okay, so those 2 cons there that I talked about are really sort of the more major ones. Like I say, the second con isn't really going to be as big, it really shouldn't be as big of a problem, as the first con was, especially if you're using your computer, in areas that are, well, computer friendly. I wouldn't exactly suggest using your computer again in the middle of some basketball game. Just doesn't really seem like it would end well. I mean, unless if you have to, but still, I would avoid that as much as possible. Let's go ahead and move on to some of the more minor cons. One of them is that I don't particularly like this right here. I'm going to actually need to zoom in on it. Well, actually I'll just take a little picture of it and show it to you in the screen flow. The MacBook Pro branding is silk screened on. In my experience, silk screening on metal, it never lasts long. It eventually will rub off. Now, I'm not really maybe this isn't. Well, I actually really haven't taken the time to examine it. Is that a silk screen, or is that like reflective in the same way a silk screened thing would be? Because it might not be. It's actually not. I don't know what that is. You know what? I'm going to take all of that back. I honestly do not know what kind of process they used to put that MacBook Pro branding on the bezel, but I do still want to say that I do prefer the white on black, the white on black that the glossy one has. So again, nitpicky. This is all nitpicky stuff. Another one is that you can see the ambient light sensor. It's obviously more visible on. Let me stand up here. It's obviously more visible on aluminum than it would be on sort of that black bezel that the glossy ones have. So there you go on that. Let's see. Obviously, again, I've kind of gotten over this, but initially I did not like the look of the aluminum bezel. I thought it looked ugly when I first saw it, like for the first time ever. It kind of made me take a couple steps back, like, hang on, wait, what is that? What is that? That is definitely not a MacBook Pro. That is like some other computer that shouldn't be in an Apple store. So that's like my initial reactions to like the very first one I ever saw, which was in a store. So there you go. I just initially didn't like it. Never liked the way that the MacBook Airs looked, but as I said, I'm starting to prefer the way that this looks. I really am. I really can say that I like the aluminum bezel a lot more than I did now. So add to that, I guess that's it for this video. Also, something else that I guess is worth noting is that this aluminum bezel that I've been talking about a lot in this video. It's not like some cheap sheet metal, you know, like paper thin sheet metal. If you take a look at it, and I'm probably going to throw up some little, you know, some pictures of it here. It has actually a bit of thickness to it. I'd say it's probably about 1 or 2 millimeters, maybe 2 millimeters. I'm really not sure. The millimeter seems to be one of those measurements that honestly doesn't appear to be standard, because, you know, like something that's labeled as being 1 millimeter thick or like 2 millimeters thick will be labeled as 1 millimeter thick on another product, and it's the same thickness. It's like weird. So, but I guess if I were the one calling it, it would be about 1 millimeter, if not 2. Just really don't know. 1 or 2 millimeters. That's what matters. So there you go. That is that. Yeah, obviously something that is kind of cool also, you cannot see, and this is also true on the glossy ones, but the little, here, I'm actually going to pull it up here so you can see this. The little FaceTime camera light, bam, there it is. You probably didn't even know, you wouldn't even know that was there if you weren't, you know, looking at this. There I am. Hello. My hair is a little crazy. Right now. So there you go. This is kind of something I like. I really like how Apple goes in and tries to hide their little LED lights that they need to put, you know, where you know, if they need to put an LED light where, you know, it's basically already aluminum, then they just go out of their way to make it as hidden as possible, and they really do a good job. I just like that. So anyways, guys, that is going to do it for this video. If these computers don't die in September, you know, if Apple continues to make these, you know, this particular model of MacBook Pro with, you know, again with the Super Drive, you know, I would definitely recommend. In fact, now I'm going to actually say that I would, you know, advise you to go with the Antiglare, because the thing is that the reason why they don't make an Antiglare MacBook Pro Retina is because, well, I think the Antiglare finish would actually kind of get in the way of the Retina screen. Like, it's so high density that it would actually make it look lower resolution, I guess. Actually, you know what, I just now thought of another con, but I'm going to go ahead and get to that here in a little bit. It is, again, a minor con, but we'll just get into that here in a little bit, as I said. But, you know, the other reason is because the Retina MacBooks, the glass pane over it, has a little bit of anti-glare technology built in. It's not 100%, like, you know, but like you can tell it's a glossy screen. It is a glossy screen. It's completely smooth, like a glossy screen. And it's even reflective. You can see yourself in it. But when you look at it straight on, it almost does what looks, I mean, again, like I say, it's not perfect, but, you know, in most everyday situations, if you look at it straight on, it basically looks like, you know, you're in your you know, basically over here, like sort of where your peripheral vision is that you're not really paying attention to, I guess. You know, it's sort of like a gradient of, like, you know, right, it's like, I can't describe it. I really don't know how to describe it. It's weird. I don't know how they do it, but it's just there's like a circle in the middle that's not glary, like, at all. And, well, it is a little glary, but, you know, especially when the screen's turned on, it's glary. It's not glary at all. But anyways, guys, that is going to do it for this video. My mouth is getting dry. So yes, sorry if it was a long video. I actually reshot the pros and cons section because my first take I took way too long on the pros. So hopefully this will be a little bit more manageable. So that is going to do it. Like I said, thank you all for watching, and again, highly would recommend this. And I forgot that other con. Like I said, the other con is still a minor con, but, you know, it could be a, you know, it's not really minor. It's minor in most cases, but, you know, if you're buying this computer, like if you're a photographer or something, and you need accurate color representations on your computer screens, stay away from the anti-glare, because, you know, the anti-glare ones don't have as accurate of a color reproduction that the glossy ones do. I can tell you, you know, I have an iMac as well, which has a glossy screen. The iMac's colors are way better. They beat this thing's colors completely. I mean, the contrast is better, the colors are richer, you know, the blacks are blacker, the whites are whiter, you know, it's just, everything about it is infinitely better. Not infinitely better, that's actually a little bit extreme. It's better color reproduction than this is. but this is still a nice screen. It really is. I mean, you can't complain about the screen. The camera doesn't really do it justice. You do need to see one of these in real life. It's just one of those situations. It's definitely a nice screen. So guys, that is going to do it. Thank you all for watching, and leave your comments down below. So thanks for watching, and adios.